Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. I'm Noreen Gillespie. I'm the Director of Journalism in Microsoft's Democracy Forward program. And I'm here today with Noda, McClatchy, and the Washington Informer. And our goal for this conversation is really to give you two real case studies of what two newsrooms have been through in the past year as they've sought to implement AI tools in their work. One of the goals for this discussion is that we know that newsrooms and journalists are all over the map with AI adoption. We've had early adopters, we've had people who've started to take a look at this and wonder how they can implement it in their organizations. And we also know that some journalists and newsrooms are wondering how to begin or if they should begin. No matter where you are in that journey, our goal today is that you can take something away from the experience of these two newsrooms and apply it to their work, or at least know what questions you need to ask to begin. So let's dive in. Josh, I want to start with you and Noda's backstory. Not too long ago, as working in a news organization, you were in a position where many of the people in our audience probably were, with trying to figure out where to get started. Tell us a little bit about that journey and how Noda began.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming on a Friday afternoon, especially with AI as a topic. I think I've been in 6 AI panels today, so hopefully we provide you with actual practical applications of how it's working very specifically in a lot of newsrooms. I was the CRO of the Los Angeles Times, and I was there in a time of very significant transition. The opportunity there was to see what technologies existed in the space currently over the last 5-7 years, and apply them to the best of our abilities at, I think at the time at least, the 4th or 3rd largest newspaper left in America. What we found was that technology was not something that was being applied at the rate that journalism frankly deserves, that media overall deserves. And what we endeavored to do was create a company that was solely focused on technology for the legacy media industry, if you will. And that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years. So in that time period, we've had AI tools, assistive AI tools ready with some of our partners, some that we'll talk to in a minute, some for over a year. They've been using these tools. We have 6 or 7 in the marketplace now. We have over 100 different publishers that we're working with currently, and we're very excited to showcase what these tools can do for you in a very real way. So thanks for having us.
Josh, let's dive into the tools a little bit first, because I think it's really important to establish what your tools are used for versus what they don't do. Talk to us a little bit about what you chose to develop and why you focused on that particular set of capabilities.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing to be mindful of, and we're certainly very cognizant of this, is that AI is just a tool. It's just machine learning. So what you need to be applying is a way in which you can be assistive to the process of creating stories. We don't really believe in doing genesis of a news story without human intervention. Everything we have is fully editable by a human. Everything we have is just there to provide you with ways in which you can save time and distribute your story in different ways. So what does that mean? We have SEO optimized everything. From an article perspective, we have the ability to transmute an article into a video. We have the same thing from a social post, an image. Really what we're trying to do is take the core of what you're doing, and what you do best is telling the story of the communities that you serve, and then accelerating the ability to tell that story in more ways than you would be able to do in a greater efficiency of time.
As you've grown, and as you've added more newsrooms and journalists to your portfolio, talk to us a little bit about the question of trust in those tools. When you're engaging with a newsroom and talking about what these tools can do, how do journalists know that these tools are safe when there's so much to choose from in the landscape of AI?
Well, they don't. You're journalists, so you're skeptical anyway. It doesn't matter what I say. They should. I mean, you should be very skeptical of all these tools. So we're doing the best we can with the technology as it exists today, and it's very mindful of the ways in which it can hallucinate, and there's a lot of problems. It's still in its infancy as a technology that helps us. We've just found ways in which it really takes down some of the very laborious, tedious tasks into minutes as opposed to more than minutes. I mean, a newsletter product that we have was the bane of my existence. We spent a fortune understanding sub-segmentation audiences. Maybe that's people that just like opinion and hikes, and maybe that's people that just like world affairs and sports. You have, I'm sure, all of these subsegments that you could serve, but it takes a very long time to put together a newsletter that would serve each of them. So one way in which you can use this technology is to create newsletters almost in an automated fashion for each of these subsegments, review it from an editorial perspective, and then push it out. So serve micro communities that you already have. You just don't have the ability and the time in the day or the staff structure to do it today. So that's one example of what we're really looking to do. So when we show you the ability to really just serve the communities that you're already trying to serve, that goes a long way to building trust with the journalistic community.
Jennifer, let's bring you into this a little bit. Tell us, first of all, a little bit about your news organization, how many newsrooms you're working with, and how you started to experiment with Noda's tools.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Robillard. I am Director of News Audience Initiatives at McClatchy. It's a U.S. News organization that has about 30 sites across the country. Our largest sites are like Miami Herald, Kansas City Star, Sacramento Bee, and then we have a slew of very small sites across the country in California, Northwest, the Carolinas. So we're kind of all over the country. I'm going to go to my slide. So part of what I want to start with and talk about and how we implemented AI in our newsrooms is starting really with just what does sustainability mean and the different ways to go at that, and how are we involving our journalists. And so it's not me going into the newsroom and say, hey, we're going to use this tool. We flipped it around and took the tool to the journalists to start testing. And so that's kind of the first thing here, the sustainability in newsrooms. They're taking the lead on the AI testing, delivering a ton of feedback, and they're identifying what they need most. And that's been very, very helpful in this process because they're really the ones using this on the ground. Another part of getting the sustainability started in the newsrooms is what does that mean for local journalism? All of our sites focus first on local journalism, not so much national stories, maybe the Miami Herald does, but most of our newsrooms are on the ground reporting in their communities. And so these tools are helping these newsrooms get that information, that news in front of more of those local readers. And I'm going to talk about the use case here in a moment. And then lastly, sustainability just for the local reporting. I'm looking for ways in which we have the reporters out in the field more often, not less often, and a lot of this helps us get there.
So why don't we go into that use case? Show us a little bit about, you've got a recent example where you were using these.
Actually, on this slide, if you guys wanted to QR code this is one that posted this morning as an example of how we're using it. This published just this morning in the Carolinas. We write every year about hurricane season, and hurricane season's only about a month and a half away. And so we have evergreen stories. We have stories we write live every year. Of course, we're going to write a story about what the forecast is for this year. These are multiple stories that we're writing with our original reporting. We're using our original reporting to fuel all of the AI use cases that we're using here. One of the ways in which we're using Noda is taking all of the stories and making like summaries and roundups and other ways in which we're getting this in front of readers. So that's one of the use cases. I have another one. I don't know if you wanted to go to that. So this one's a little bit more in depth. Also another North Carolina story. Every year, I oversee the service journalism teams in McClatchy, which means a lot of things. We do a lot of explainer journalism and informational journalism. We write about copperheads every year in North Carolina. People are Googling what happens if I get bit by a snake. People Google how venomous. And so this is really, our local readers are asking these questions, and we're delivering these in multiple stories. And what we did here is take our original stories and again do a story roundup so people can find information all in one story and link out to other stories, but also did an evergreen informational video. We've used these to do newsletter intros for our AM, PM newsletters to talk about this, and social posts. And so we're all familiar now with the Instagram carousels with bullet points, and people are sliding through to get quick hit information. What one of Noda's tools does is that we can put in this information, our URLs, our original reporting, into the tool, and then editors involved, reporters involved every step of the process go through and edit in all these different platforms, and it speeds up our process in order to get the news in front of people in different ways.
Jennifer, I'm wondering if you could just break down a before and after for us. So what did this process look like before you had the tools in place, and how is it different now that you're using them? Were there more people involved, less people involved? Did it take more time? Did it take less time? Just maybe draw that comparison for us a little bit.
Yeah, so one of the reasons we started here, particularly with these roundup stories, is that's something that takes the reporter extra time. And so a lot of these stories are written by the same reporter. And in addition to writing these stories, then she would put aside time to do this roundup, right, when we had this collection of stories. And so that alone, we went from maybe the reporter, instead of spending time reporting or working on a news story, instead of spending an hour and a half doing a roundup story, we're down to like 20 minutes, and then giving it an edit, making sure that everything's how we like it. We have transparency language on these. We give credit to the reporters throughout the story. All that great stuff comes together, and we are saving time then for her to do news stories, additional stories.
I want to go back to something you said before about bringing the journalist into the process. Talk to us about the training program that you designed at McClatchy and how you found meaningful language to get the journalists involved, and how you dealt with journalists who were hesitant to embrace this technology.
So there's a couple steps here. We started experimenting with AI almost 2 years ago now, kind of more frequently across teams. Again, I'm working across 30 newsrooms, and so I'm involving reporters and editors from very small newsrooms and very large newsrooms with varying degrees of skepticism and excitement, right? And so I'm working with a lot of people. One of the things in the process and leading up to the NOTA testing that we've been doing with teams in 4 newsrooms specifically right now is that involving the editors and reporters in the process. At McClatchy, we now have an editor, Peter Baniak, who is our AI lead. He's doing a lot of trainings right now, going newsroom to newsroom, talking about AI and how we can use it in journalism. And meanwhile, I'm working on the ground with the reporters and editors with this testing, and having them doing the testing was a big part of it. And then giving them lots of time to also do the testing. We didn't race to publish. Nota knows this. We were like, kind of sitting there for a month, allowing the reporters and editors to figure it out, go in and give feedback. We didn't just race to publish.
When we were getting ready for the session, I think we were talking about the concept of letting the reporters break the robot, right?
Yes.
Talk to us about what they found in it, what they liked it. Did they find anything that needed to be fixed as you were going through that training process?
Of course, right? Of course. And so a big part of it, we're testing also for SEO, not just for the aggregated story feature. It's like, this doesn't quite give me back what I'm looking for, right? And so we have those conversations with Nota on what about the tone, what about what kind of language we're getting back from the SEO product. We did a lot of testing with opinion content, and an editor at the Kansas City Star spent a lot of time in the SEO tool. This is what we're talking about, not rushing to publish, but spending time in the tool to get it where we want it to be and what we expect from something like opinion content versus news content versus crime content.
How much were you able to share learnings from different newsrooms in your network? You had this immense challenge of trying to train multiple newsrooms on these tools all at once. It can be very hard to implement that type of change across a large organization. What was your strategy going into that challenge?
There's a lot of different strategies. And so one of them is what I already referenced, is that we do have an editor who's kind of going newsroom to newsroom, holding national or company-wide trainings and sharing a lot of our findings, not just our successes, but also what we're finding that we need to improve. And that's really increasing our understanding across the company, across these 30 sites, about how we can use these as a tool for journalists. How does this help journalists do their reporting on the ground? We're testing more than Nota, data analysis, and then all the way to kind of this production of how can we present this information from our readers. And so it is an evolution. We are taking time to make sure everyone is hearing what they need to hear and also getting an opportunity to test.
Desmond, I'd like to move to your story a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your publication, the significance that it has in the Washington, D.C. community, and where you found yourself recently having to go through a digital transformation.
Hello. My name is Desmond Barnes. I am with the Washington Informer newspaper in Washington, D.C., which is a woman-owned newspaper in Washington, D.C. that services the African-American community. It was established in 1964, actually by my grandfather, Dr. Calvin Rolark, and my mother is now the publisher of the newspaper. So I am the social media manager now, and I play a bunch of other different roles whenever my mother calls my phone. I would say we've recently started implementing AI into our business around October last year, so it's fairly new for us. but we have been using it to help with our newsletter process and also our social media engagement in order to try to increase our clicks, our page views, and sending more people to our website.
Talk to us a little bit about when you started to use the tool for the newsletter. Did you have an AI policy in place? Was there training involved? Was it you experimenting with it? What did that process look like?
I got an email from my mother saying, there's this new program that I need you to learn how to use. And so I'm pretty much trying to, along with some of the trainings that we'll have with NODA, explain to everyone on the staff how to use it. But at that time, around October last year, we were at around an 18% open rate for our newsletters, which is below average. According to MailChimp, the average open rate is around 21%. Right now we're at 27%. So that's in a matter of 4 months, with pretty much me being the main person on the staff using it. So I'm trying to get more of the reporters and some of the other people on the social media team to engage with the program more so that we can do it, increase.
What's been successful and what's been challenging about those conversations? Because you've seen some success, right, in using the tool. How are you engaging with the rest of the staff? How are you talking about the tool? And what are you encountering in those conversations?
I think the biggest issue that we had was just technology in general. A lot of people on our staff are just not familiar with how to use newer technologies. So for me, it was a matter of learning as much as I could and just trying to explain to everyone on the staff how to use the program or the software. But over the last couple of months, there has been more excitement from the staff of people who want to use it based off the numbers that we've seen on the newsletter and all the other tools that NODA has for us, including like the video production tool, as we're trying to be more of a multimedia organization. So there's been a lot more people engaging, in the last couple of months.
Talk to us a little bit about why the newsletter was so central to your strategy as your publication changed and as you were trying to grow your audience. Why did you start there with Notice Tools?
Well, the reason we started with Notice Tools is because we were getting a lot of unopened emails. We were having a lot of people on our list that were not engaging with our emails, so we had to figure out what strategies we would use to reach more people. So the first thing that we did was eliminate everyone that was not consistently opening our emails. We brought our list down from around 20,000 people to 7,500 people. After that, we were trying to figure out what tools we could use, like I said earlier, to just get people to engage a little bit more. And that came with maybe trying to figure out, was it our tonality? Like, what are we saying, or what can we improve on to make people interested? Because you only get around like 3 seconds nowadays for people to be interested in what you're talking about. The majority of emails and advertisements that people see nowadays kind of goes in one ear, out the other. So we were trying to figure out a quick way that we could get people to engage with us. So when we found out about Notice Tools for different tonalities, that was one of the reasons that we started using it.
And with your newsletter production, same question as we talked about with Jennifer before. What was that process like pre-tool, and what was that process like post-tool?
Pre-tool took a little bit longer than you would want. We would have to, when I say we, myself, I would have to go to once our articles were published on our website, I would have to go to every article, save the image, find the image in our database, read the article, try to summarize it in an amount of words that would engage people, less than a paragraph. And that would take sometimes 20 to 30 minutes out of the day for something that now, since we've been using NODA, takes around 2 to 3 minutes. So that's been very helpful.
That's amazing. Jennifer, let me go back to you for just a second. So I'm curious about how McClatchy approached the adoption of the tools. I think one of the places where newsrooms often get stuck in the adoption process is, do you need a policy first and then the tools, or do you need the tools first and then the policy? Talk to us a little bit about what that process looked, which came first, and how you navigated either revising the policy or looking at the tool to make sure that it fit the policy.
Absolutely. We did start testing, but not necessarily publishing, right, as we developed an AI policy for McClatchy, which is, if you Google it, you'll find it is published online. It's forward-facing, reading-facing. Unfortunately, I don't have a QR code for that on one of my slides. I should have. What we actually ended up doing is, as I started working on leading some of the tests and bringing AI into the newsrooms for them to test and also get feedback on what they needed the most, McClatchy developed essentially a committee, a working group of reporters, editors, visual journalists, all coming together and writing that policy, so it was a collective policy. And now that we've done more testing, we now have the taglines, or what we put on the stories, that's the transparency for our readers, developed. And so if it's video or it's a story aggregation or even our newsletter intros, all are transparent that it's AI assisted and edited by our editors. Everything that goes through our editors. And we're actually right now in the process of revisiting that policy, that committee that finalized in October. And already now we're testing more and more and discovering more ways in which we can be even more transparent with our readers, and how that's really our main objective there, right, is to be transparent with readers.
So the committee is a living, breathing, constantly renewing.
Absolutely. And we added 2 new members to it this round, more reporters who had gotten more engaged with the reporting, a service journalist who's been working on NOTA, and also a data reporter who's working on some other products.
So Josh, we've had 2 very different examples here of how these tools have been implemented. We've got Desmond's mom calls him, tells him it's time to go, right? He's had great success. And then Jennifer has had to work through a multi-newsroom organization, teach her journalists to break the robot, take that constructive feedback, work with, a lot of different layers in an organization. What have you seen across all of the newsrooms who have been working towards adoption? Are there common themes that you've seen that lead to success when they bring these tools into their newsroom?
No, not overall. I think that it depends on how we approach this possibility and this opportunity. So editors at some organizations are very excited to be using this, and they want to make sure that the newsroom has the ability to accelerate storytelling, and that's where we start. Sometimes it's a CTO who knows that everyone's using Anthropic or OpenAI on their own, and they're freaking out about the loss of data and not controlling it and not knowing what to do, so they want to kind of consolidate all of that under one roof, and they come to us and say, okay, this is a really good tool set, and we know where the data goes, and it's secure. So we'd like to move in that direction, and sometimes it's outside of the CMS. It's with audience teams and consumer marketing teams, and they say, we don't really have the possibility to tell this story to the degree of which we would hope to. I think of investigative stories specifically. No one within the organization outside of the newsroom is aware of investigative stories until they publish, and that puts them at a disadvantage. I would argue the most important things that you do on a daily basis are seeing interaction with less people, because you can't create assets and push those out to the market at the speed in which they deserve. And these tools allow for that to happen. So that's all different groups that come to us for different concerns and from different perspectives. And then you have, I'd say, the larger organizations that have the luxury of creating AI councils or really thoughtfully looking at what they should be doing, and that's a long period of time, depending on who we're talking to, and that's great. Be very skeptical, as always. And then we have very, very small organizations that they just view this as just the ability to finally help them. So that's a very quick conversation. That would be nice. Yeah, just call your mom, I guess. So it's really all over the map, and we wanted to make sure, and I think that other tools in the marketplace should be doing this if they're not already, that you're serving the entire organizational structure. So we have integrations within the CMSs, we have browser extensions, we have dashboards. So no matter where you are within the organizational structure, you have access to these tool sets, and you can use them for your work.
I'm curious about, and this question is for everyone, jump in as you want to. How have you
Well, speaking for the Informer, I think a lot of people in the organization are getting more excited about it and trying to use it in their various positions. But like I said, we have not learned enough yet to incorporate like what AI means to us. So as of right now, we're still in the learning process, but there's a lot of people, like I said, who are getting more excited about how to use it in our organization.
I'm going to go back to the break the robot reference. Definitely, again, taking the tools straight to the reporters and editors and challenging them to just test it and give feedback, and absolutely break the robot. Like, push the limits of what you're seeing before we get to any stage of publishing, and get comfortable with the tools. And that alone changed a lot of, I think, the feeling of AI's coming for us, and more like we're using AI as a tool. Right? And so I see much more excitement and much more willingness for across the organization, people raising their hands and saying, hey, I want to try this because I see someone else trying this with one of the tests we're doing.
You want to go?
I'm not part of that. I work at a tech company now, so I don't have that.
Go ahead, Desmond.
I would say one more thing about the tool that kind of makes everyone at ease is when they see how easy it is to use. It's not a difficult program. So I think that's the challenge a lot of times is when people hear AI, I think they start thinking about iRobot and, you know, a lot of things that can be very difficult to comprehend. But once they see how someone like myself can use the tool, like I said, it puts everyone else at ease on the staff.
So you both have local news organizations with much different pressures, much different missions. I think we're all familiar with the challenges that local news faces in communities around the globe. I think, you know, we've talked a lot about the things that it can do for, the AI can do for you in your daily lives, but how optimistic are you that it will translate into you being a better business? Do you see that possibility? Are you skeptical about that possibility? If I was going to ask you to kind of cast out a year, 2 years from now, what do you think this landscape looks like?
So I think it's very difficult to say what this landscape looks like in 2 years because it's changing so quickly. However, what I do see is that the tool is being used by all journalists in the company in some way. AI is being used by all journalists in the company in some way. So what does that look like? And Josh referenced other departments and marketing and everything. Everyone's looking at this. I do think that what we'll see, both for our, because there are small newsrooms in McClatchy, even if most of our testing right now is happening in some of our mid to larger newsrooms. But one of the ways in which I'd like to see this help small newsrooms is exactly the use case that we've set up with the service journalist at a large North Carolina paper. Giving the tool to the reporters in order to speed up some of the process. Still original reporting, they're still writing the original story, but it gives them the ability to communicate the news or the information in new ways. And a lot of the small newsrooms don't right now have the bandwidth to create a video with every story, and now this gives them the opportunity to do that. That's where I see us in 2 years. And so it's more diversified entry points for our readers, and we all know that increasingly people want their news in different ways, and so what does that look like? For the larger newsrooms, there's just more people in the newsroom to do it. In the small newsrooms and the hyperlocal journalism, the more that we can help those newsrooms get that information to their communities in different ways that's a big deal. That's one.
I would say, okay. Oh, there we go. That's exactly what I was going to say, which is on the screen. So since we've implemented Noda into our system, we have seen a 60% increase on our page views on our website. So that's in a matter of 4.5 months. We don't also have an idea of what we want it to look like in 2 years because there is so much changing rapidly. But if I could say our goal right now is to at least try to engage our social media engagement by around 10% over the next 4 months, which would take us from around 4,400 social media followers, 40,000 social media followers to 44,000 social media followers is what we're looking to see in like the next 4 months with the new engagement tools that we have.
Josh, talk to me a little bit about how you're considering expansion for NODA. Obviously, there's newsrooms that can afford to pay for this, and there's newsrooms that are still trying to figure that out. How are you approaching that as a business challenge?
Fortunately, we didn't get into this business to make a lot of money because the news organizations are under great amount of pressure. So what we want to do is make sure that these tools are completely accessible to everyone, and we really mean that. So the price of these tools per month is extraordinarily affordable, and within I think a week of now, we're going to be able to have something that goes out to market that talks about a grant that we have for very, very small newsrooms of just a few people. So access to the latest tools that we can create for you will be available at the lowest possible cost. I mean, less than your subscriptions to other publications probably. That's the goal. I mean, that's the dream, because this technology isn't applied to our industry in a rigorous manner. It's certainly not applied outside of some of the larger organizations, in the belief that they're doing a good job and they're trying to make an impact. And because we come from the same industry, we want to be extraordinarily mindful of how we construct it. So everything is very assistive. We're never going to make generative tools. We're always going to have editorial integration and feedback. That's a huge part of our DNA. So hope you can connect with us and we can talk about how we can serve you.
All right, before we move to questions, I'm going to ask each of you, if you were speaking to a newsroom who is hesitant about adopting these tools, what piece of advice would you give them about getting started?
Test it, use it. I think that a lot of folks maybe have used ChatGPT and maybe not much else. And there's a lot out there that can help us all enhance our journalism and automate parts of our jobs that we don't necessarily want to do all the time. I definitely hear from newsrooms, like SEO is a big one from reporters and from newsrooms, right? So whatever we can do to help them get there, that's the messaging I would give, right? Identify the things that you would like to use AI for and go from there. And start using the tool. See how it can help you work through your reporting and your writing, and again, the different ways in which we're reaching our audiences. I mean, that's really how this product has helped a lot of that testing, is setting it up so that reporters and editors are seeing the process start to finish, and they're on the ground, and they're getting to touch all of the tools and do SEO in the tool and create different ways that their story they already wrote can be presented to our readers. That was a game changer, I think, is just having them in the tool.
I would piggyback off of that and also just say, just give it a chance. That's what we did, and we saw results quickly. So, like I said, I know sometimes just thinking about some of these things can be a little overwhelming, but the software itself is pretty easy to use. So I would say, maybe talk to some organizations and see how, it has affected them. If you talk to me, I'll tell you that it's helped us. So that's kind of the advice that I would give.
I'll say, real quick, I'll say one more thing, because this has come up a couple times as well, is in conversations that I've had with newsrooms, a lot of folks are like, well, I'm not tech, I don't know how to use tech, and Desmond's brought that up a couple times. And so the more that we make the tools accessible and show that it's not like you have to code in order to use AI, has been very much also something that has helped a reporter saying, oh, this is how I can use this, and this really helps me.
Really think about distribution. So this is exciting time. I mean, it's the very beginning, as you've heard ad nauseum today, and probably as you've been trying it out yourself. It's super basic compared to what it's about to be. But just imagine that, you only like all of your news to come in the form of a podcast, and you want every podcast to be in the form of a K-pop song, and that's how you want to listen to the news every day. That's not even impossible today. We could do that now. Or you just want to watch videos. You don't read articles or listen to podcasts. So I want a talking dinosaur to be telling me what's happening in the world around me today. That's completely possible. So the distribution methodology that is about to come online, if you will, for your storytelling is going to be infinite. So it just really solidifies the need for what you do to tell the story itself. Like the purity of that idea is what persists throughout all of this technology. And I think that might be getting lost in a lot of the a lot of the fear or a lot of the misalignment with incentives from the monetary perspective, whatever that else may be. The reality is you have the ability to serve people in the exact way in which they wish to be served. And the better you tell that story and the more you unearth stories that matter to people, the more impact you're going to be able to make.
All right, I believe that we've got a microphone that will be moving around the room with questions.
Thanks a lot. Amazing panel. Just a question about ethics, of course, obviously to the publishers and to you. Do you think the readers should know if the content is 100% AI generated?
I think if it's 100% AI generated, they should know, but we're not using AI generated information. It's all assisted. So everything that we have has already been written. We're just figuring out different ways to come up with captions or to summarize it. But yeah, I do believe ethically someone should know if their story is completely 100% AI generated.
For McClatchy, this goes back to the creation of the council and the external, and we do have an internal policy as well that guides our reporters. We are transparent with the assistants. And so even if we're starting with that original content, which is exactly what we want to be starting for, right? Our own original reporting and stories and archives, we do add a tagline to the end of the newsletters, to the end of stories that say that this was AI assisted with and edited by McClatchy journalists. It's really important for readers, I think, to know, I mean, just part of journalism, trust and transparency, right? But to know how we're using AI tools, because the sooner also that we're communicating this to our readers, in the long run, that just builds more trust on how we're using these tools to enhance the reporting and the journalism we're doing. Absolutely.
As everything develops, we provide you with the latest and greatest ability. So CTPA integration, we're already way ahead of the EU on AI Accord. We provide the ability for you to say whatever you want in terms of legal language around the things that you're generating with us. But it's going to get more interesting if we just go back to my idea of a talking dinosaur. That's generative, right? That didn't exist in the world, but the story is not generative. It's still the purity of the story of the reporter. So what is that? Is that assistive? Yes. Is that generative? Yes. Yeah, there's going to be a lot more of those kind of conversations that need to happen, and I think that's more of a case by case or journalist by journalist maybe even problem that we're going to have to solve.
Right over here.
Thank you very much. That was fascinating. I'm Francois Nell here from the Media Innovation Studio in the UK. Just a question. I'm very excited to hear about all the more things you could do and the different distributions. I'm just like to hear from all of you. Are you thinking about the environmental impact of producing more and also the social impact of creating more? And because obviously all of this runs on the planet and has an impact. So I'm just wondering, do you think about that?
I'm so glad you asked that question. No one's ever asked that question. I think about it every day. We're a startup, so yes, I would love to have environmental impact being a consideration as compute costs gets more effective. I think that's going to be hopefully something that helps, but that's certainly a problem, right? And then I think you were referencing the idea of just like creating more content for content's sake. A thing that's really bothered me in this conference is everyone's pointing to a 90% of media is going to be synthetic by 2030, I think was 95%. That's not a real figure. And then also synthetic media, if you look at what that actually means, that's also vague. If you translate something in another language, that's synthetic media, whatever. But the reality of most of that is like 99% of that no one ever looks at, except for bots. So it's not really doing that impact. We just need to be aware of where we're getting our information. I think a lot of that is just going to be not effective for those who are trying to make a profit off of this, and they're quickly going to see that that is just not viable, so that'll probably reduce a lot of that synthetic content in the future. That's my thoughts.
I can honestly say we haven't had any conversations at our organization yet about the environmental impacts of using this software. So that's something that I, have to bring back to the table and kind of talk about that with everyone. Because I don't want to fluff you and just, so yeah.
Other questions? I think at this stage, what we are inspired about is the way these organizations are using these tools to expand to new audiences. Certainly we're cognizant of the fact that we don't want to have negative environmental impact, but I'm happy to talk to you outside of the panel on this issue. Find me in the back of the room.
Yeah, also to to follow up on the Microsoft question, I'm curious, it says we're sharing tools from across Microsoft. I'm wondering if there are some other tools you might mention that you're working on or that Microsoft is working on to support journalism?
That's a great question. So we, in the Democracy Forward program, we do a lot of different things to partner with journalism organizations. So for example, we work with NODA all the time in their engagements in Newsroom. They are built on Microsoft technology, and so, but we continue to engage with the journalism community with them and with our publishing partners to find opportunities to support journalism writ large. But what we're also doing in the field of AI is that we've recently struck partnerships with a number of organizations, some of which I see in the room, hello Ground Truth, to work on a couple of things as newsrooms begin their AI adoption journeys. So we're working with the Online News Association, with the Craig Newmark School of Journalism, with Ground Truth, with NODA, and with Semaphore to do a few things. The first is to make sure that we're scaling responsible AI policies across journalism so that newsrooms are learning from each other and sharing those learnings to make sure that when innovations happen, everybody has access to them and we're all able to continue to innovate at the same rate. We're also working with each of those organizations on specific projects for individual journalists or newsrooms to try to get started with AI, and we're going to be sharing those learnings back with the industry writ large. I think our goal this year is really to make sure that we're helping newsrooms connect with each other so that they can learn what's working, what's not, and learn from each other with our support.
This question's for Noda. How are you thinking about creating a large language model that is, free of bias or that, ensures transparency for the customers that you work with?
It's a hard question. We have our own large language model, Evan. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to mention it. Evan is my co-founder. So yeah. Let's be transparent, Evan. So we're really worried about that too. So we've created our own large language model. It's not foundational, but it's built on the data sets of our customers, unlike what OpenAI has done, which is a whole other topic that I'm not really versed in very deeply. We get the allowance to go into content libraries and train our model. With a lot of our partners. So dozens and dozens of our partners have entered into that agreement. That helps train our model. It's specifically for journalism outputs. Therefore, right now, it's beating all the other models that exist in the marketplace.
I think we have time for one more question.
Could I push on that last point, because I'm curious about what the opt-out process looks like if someone wants to use NODA but not provide their data for training your model? Is that an option?
It's an opt-in process. So in the sense that you have to opt in to give us the data to train the model. So if you don't opt into that, it's just utilized. You're using our model, but you're not training the model in any way. We're not using your data
What's
outside
the incentive to opt in?
You're doing a good job, something great for journalism as a whole. I would argue that that's probably going to be the biggest miss for the next 5 years, is that collectively journalism is not going to come together and create its own marketplace for data. And that's a shame. But that's a whole other topic that we could talk about at another point. If they want to right now, yeah. That's correct. Yeah, I'd prefer if they had an open source free model for themselves. And then I would opt into that and pay them for it.
So why not open source the model that you're building?
Because I'm a startup and I have to make money.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you for staying with us late on a Friday afternoon. Thank you to our fabulous panelists, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.